First question: how did this start? How did the Final Fantasy concert series begin? I understand it was in Tokyo. How did that come around?
So the question is the first Final Fantasy.
The beginning,
concert,
yes, the very beginning.
This is 2002, right? It's before even my time.
一番初めのは何年だったかな、1990何年だろうね、何ですか、90年代の初期に一度だけ日本でやったんですけど、それからしばらくずっと日本ではコンサートやってなくて、2002年に久々にやったのかな。でそれがすごく好評だったんで、2002年をきっかけにして定期的に何年かに一度やるようになったんですかね。でそのうちにアニーさんと知り合って、2010年にはこういうふうにワールドツアーができるようになりました。
Yeah, we wait. Take your time.
Oh, I got nowhere to be. We're fine. Actually, we'll have about 5 hours of what are we going to do until the concert tonight. But we're not from Houston. We're from San Antonio.
You'll edit. You'll be editing, right?
there we go. There we go.
So the first concert of Final Fantasy was in about 1990, about
97, 98?
I think
1993 or something.
Oh, that long ago.
Wow. That's a while back, yes.
Only one.
Right.
So that was the first concert in Japan. I mean, the Final Fantasy concert. But after that, we hadn't done a lot after that. But he did the concert from 2002. It was 2002.
Oh yes.
The long title.
It's in 2002-0220 was the title of the concert, which was the date, February 20th, 2002.
Nice.
That was the name of that concert.
And all the fans liked it so much, so we started doing the concert from 2002. And I've been doing the concert for a long time, and in 2010 now, we are now doing the world concert, so it's getting bigger and
Oh, okay.
It goes out here.
Thank you.
Now, how do you gentlemen feel about the current trend in video game music toward orchestra? Whereas previously, when you first started, it was, electronic. It was whatever you could get out of the hardware. How do you feel about, that progression?
If I may, I'll just say that I think that, this is actually very appropriate for having Nobu-san here, because if I'm not mistaken, he was the first, or close to the first, if he wasn't the first, to use recorded orchestra in video games for the very first time. That there was a point where audio tracks went up from 8-bit to, let's say, 16-bit audio.
Yeah, I think that would have been the PlayStation when it went CD-based, and you could stream audio from the CD.
And then, of course, Final Fantasy started using orchestra tracks, and it was...
With 7, I believe, right?
Yeah,
was
7
kind of
was
that.
the first one to use orchestra?
8.
8, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's a very appropriate thing, but I think that started it, and of course you see a lot of people using orchestra now, but you still see now there may be more of a, the sample technology and the sounds coming out of synth apparatus now. Sampled sound is getting, computing power is getting better and better, so it's able to handle very big libraries of sounds. So, for instance, now you're starting to see, humongous music libraries. When I say that, libraries of sound,
right, that
recorded
can be manipulated.
Sound, like Vienna Library and things like that, where gigs and gigs and gigs of recorded audio are in there, and you can actually manipulate it quickly, and you have very convincing sounding tracks. And of course, that makes it a very useful tool for composers and producers. And there's still quite a bit of that going on. I don't know that there's a preference, but certainly it may have led right from that point where the PlayStation had that capability. What do you think about orchestra versus synth
Yeah.
in video games?
でももう最近のゲームは本当にみんなオーケストラを使うゲームが増えてきて、逆にオーケストラでやることってそれほどこうなんていう目立たないというか特殊なことではない。だから今やるんだったら僕はもう次のファイナルファンタジーなんかとは別の今作ってる作品はアナログシンセサイザーだけでやろうとしてますけど、その方が面白いんじゃないのかな今。Wait.
Processing. One moment,
Right.
please.
Yeah, computing, right?
So, the video game, which is released recently, has most of it has orchestra sounds, and to do the orchestra sounds for him is not the best way, maybe because there's too many orchestra sounds in video games, and it all sounds similar. So what he's thinking is for the new project, he wants to do with the analog synthesizer only, not using
okay.
those samples, orchestra samples.
So it almost sounds like it's not special anymore.
Yeah,
It's been used so
it's
much.
commonplace.
There's such a prevalence of orchestra that I think you're seeing a reaction going back to, more synth stuff. That's a further reaction saying that we're going to go back to the analog synth sounds, which have been sampled now and are being played digitally. But we use that as well. I mean, that's really, we were talking about Mannheim Steamroller. That's all analog synth sounds. That's Chip stays in that area all the time. That's where he feels that he's established a sound and he wants to stay with that. But orchestra around that, I think the combination is more commonplace. A combination of synth and orchestra, that seems to be what's
Trend.
mostly happening now.
Oh, okay.
For instance, in Final Fantasy 13, I noticed that maybe 20%, that not more than that, was all orchestra. The rest, 80% of it seems like it's synth, from what I've listened to.
Oh, okay.
And 14, what is similar?
Everything.
Everything all synth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the entire track, right? Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
でも多分全部生のオーケストラを使ってないけど、14は多分パッと聞いた人は本物のオーケストラを使ってると思う。それぐらいこう進歩してると思う。
So there is no orchestra recordings in 14, but we use those orchestra samples, so it sounds like the real orchestra. So what he wants to do next is not using those synth with the orchestra sounds.
Right.
It sounds different with the analog synthesizer.
Right. But certainly it's, for instance, these, not to jump into this, but the Tokyo concerts that we've just announced that we're doing, we are orchestrating all of the Final Fantasy 14 and 13 songs that we will be performing there live for the first time. Even here tonight, we've orchestrated 2 pieces that we're playing tonight as a sneak preview of Final Fantasy 14. So we are orchestrating it so that we can play it with live orchestra. Because these concerts are very much about a live orchestra performance. They're not about, it's not rock band and orchestra or anything. This is really featuring the Houston Symphony. So all the arrangements will be based on acoustic live orchestra concert.
Oh, okay. Now let me ask both you gentlemen this: do you feel that concerts such as tonight's concert and also Star Wars Live, things of that nature, do you feel that they serve to introduce young people to orchestral and even classical music? Do you think this could serve as like a gateway to get young people interested?
Certainly. We're in an era in the United States, and maybe Japan too, I don't know, but certainly in Europe and Asia where, and certainly in the United States, music education has been cut below the bone at this point. That along with other things like phys ed and visual arts and various other things, a lot of those things are just disappearing from the school curriculum. And the problem is that unless families can afford to put their kids into private music education situations, then we're losing generations of music aficionados, audience members. And it's not just for right now. They grow up and they don't expose their kids to it. So now how many generations are we losing? Because they're used to that. You know, this is how they grew up. They didn't get exposed. And it's a very sad thing. Orchestras are struggling, not just orchestras, ballet companies, opera companies, art museums and galleries and things. Everyone is struggling to try to maintain what they have. And better, is there a way that we can bring new young audience into the concert hall? So yes, the answer to your question is certainly any way that we can expose people to the live concert experience, whether it be music of Final Fantasy. I do several other things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, concerts that are bringing a different kind of audience into the concert hall. But I must point out, and I say this to orchestras all the time, the thrust of how do you keep those
Maintain
audience
that
members back in the regular orchestra programming. There's the rub, and that's what's difficult.
That's the $64 question.
Right, and in most pop concerts, that's been not very successful. You know, you'll have Tony Bennett one night, and nobody will come to an orchestra concert. But you will have video game music fans coming back in, and I do read from our fans that they go to some classical concerts, and I think that if orchestras seize the moment and program some important video game music scores, that as you'll hear, you know, in concert, a lot of these scores can stand on the concert hall stage perfectly fine, right next to a Carmina Burana or a Beethoven's Ninth or a Holst Planets or whatever. It takes the top music director of each of the orchestras to say, yes, we're going to program One Winged Angel or Liberi Fatale or something to sit right on a regular program, in a subscription program, and you will have 500 to 1,000 video game fans coming to the Houston Symphony to do that. And they might hear something they really love in the Holst Planets or Stravinsky or whatever it is they might be hearing. Because after all, we're all built on what has come before us.
Right.
We didn't just magically appear, you know. There's all of these wonderful composers that have come before us, Prokofiev, Shostakovich, Tchaikovsky, and more. So, you know, it's just a matter of exposure. So much of this is just exposure and education.
Now, you yourself, Mr. Roth, have you scored any games yourself?
I've done arrangements, and I actually worked. A lot of people don't know I worked on the original Halo. Yeah.
Really?
Believe it or not, that was born in Chicago. Marty O'Donnell and Mike Salvatore were the composers of that, and I actually wrote some of the arrangements for the original recordings and performed. I played violin on it as a matter of fact.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, so I actually did that. But no, I wouldn't say that I've ever scored a full video game myself. I've done about 12 movies, full-length movies.
Right.
But I'd love to work on it at some point, but we're busy as it is.